What's up, Falcons Nation? It's your boy Jew coming at you with another Atlanta Falcons video. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up. In today's video, I want to give you guys some quick Atlanta Falcons news, and then I also want to talk about new free agent signing Mike Pennel Jr. But if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you'll know when I've done Atlanta Falcons content. Hit that like button for your boy. I really appreciate each and every one of you guys for continuing to tune into the channel, continuing to share out my content on all the social media platforms. If you would like to follow your boy on Twitter and Instagram, you can follow me at Jew Talk Sports. If you would like to donate to my channel, you can donate to my Cash App, which is the $ Jew Talk Sports. But like I said, I really appreciate each and every one of you guys for continuing to help me grow my channel. We are currently on the road to 2,000 subscribers. But with that being said, let's jump right into the video. So first off, in Atlanta Falcons news, yesterday our Atlanta Falcons signed 2 offensive linemen and 1 defensive lineman. The 2 offensive linemen that we signed was Danny Isadora, who's a veteran who's been in the league for a couple years now at that offensive line position. We also brought in Brian Witzman. He's also a veteran offensive lineman who's been in the league for a couple years now. And then we also signed on the defensive line, Mike Pennel Jr., which I think was the most important signing for our Atlanta Falcons out of the 3 guys that signed with us yesterday. As I mentioned, all of the guys that we brought in, all of these guys are veteran guys who've been in the league for some years now. But I do think that each one of these guys that we brought in could possibly contribute to our Atlanta Falcons. I'm super impressed with Terry Fontenot as our GM, that he's not sitting on his hands, but he's seen that we struggled in the trenches in this first game against the Philadelphia Eagles. And they talked about this roster being a roster that that will be forever changing, that we weren't going to stick with the 53 men that we had on the roster, but that we were going to continue to improve the roster. And I definitely think that these were some great signings. We let go of 2 wide receivers off the practice squad. And I believe we also let go of a tight end from the practice squad to be able to bring in these new signings. But I like each one of these guys that we brought in. I think all 3 of these guys could definitely come in and contribute. We know that Jalen Mayfield struggled in that first game and that we're very young on the offensive line. So I do believe that these guys that they brought in, Brian Witzman, I believe, is the better of the 2 offensive linemen. I believe that Brian Witzman is better than Danny Isadora. But I think both of these guys bring some leadership as far as being a veteran, having that experience. Brian Witzman is a guy who played for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I definitely think that he could come in if Jalen Mayfield continues to struggle to possibly be that guy who can play that guard position for us. Witzman is a really big guy, 6'7", 300 plus pounds, athletic. And I definitely think that he's a guy who could come in if Jalen Mayfield continues to struggle and compete for that starting left guard role. Now, with that being said, I do want to jump right into the video and talk about Mike Pennel Jr. I believe that Mike Pennel Jr. was the biggest signing out of all 3 guys that we brought in. Mainly this video is going to be about him. You guys know that I'm huge on the trenches. I always say that the trenches matter, that the games in the NFL and in football in general is won in the trenches. And Mike Pennel Jr. could be a force for our Atlanta Falcons. He could be that final piece that we've been missing on this Atlanta Falcons defense. I've consistently said that we needed a nose tackle, a defensive tackle that is 320 to 330 pounds. And Mike Pennel Jr. is that guy. This guy is 6'4", 330 pounds. He played with the Kansas City Chiefs 2 years ago when they won the Super Bowl against the 49ers. And he played for the Kansas City Chiefs last year as well. And he's a guy that's a veteran in this league. He's played for, I believe, 3 or 4 teams in the league, the Green Bay Packers, the Chicago Bears. He's played for a couple different teams in this league, but he is, I believe, the final piece for this Atlanta Falcons defense as far as the defensive line. We've been talking about bringing in a guy who could help Grady Jarrett on the double teams where he's not being double teamed on every single play. And I feel like we needed that space eater, a guy who could stop the run, a guy who's physical in the trenches, a guy who's hard to move out of the rush lanes and allow the linebackers to be able to make plays in the backfield. Mike Pennel Jr. is that guy. Mike Pennel Jr. is one of the better run stuffers in the game. He's a guy that, if you go look at the Kansas City Chiefs, he did a lot of the dirty work lining up next to Chris Jones, who's another great defensive tackle in this game. But I think that bringing in Mike Pennel Jr. is going to unleash guys like Grady Jarrett to one-on-one matchups. He's going to make it easier for guys off the edge to be able to get sacks and things of that nature. And he's going to open up Deion Jones, Michael Walker, and Ofoye Oluokun to allow these guys to make plays. If you watch the Philadelphia Eagles game, the offensive line pushed our defensive line around. They were getting to the second level, and they basically were not allowing our linebackers to make plays because they were knocking us off the ball. They was blowing our defensive line off the ball. If you look at that one play against the Eagles where Kenneth Gainwell scored the touchdown, he basically was untouched. They had John Kaminsky at the time lined up inside as the nose tackle, and he basically was double teamed and blown off the ball on that play. But they pretty much blew everybody off the ball. Steven Means was blown off the ball. I believe at that time Dante Fowler Jr. was in the game. All four of our defensive linemen on that play was blown off the ball, and Kenneth Gainwell basically walked in for an easy touchdown untouched. With bringing in a guy like Mike Pennel Jr., a lot of this will change. He's a guy that will be able to hold the point on defense. He'll be able to allow Grady Jarrett to get those one-on-one matchups. He'll be able to push the pocket, and he's a guy who also can bat passes because he's really tall, has really long arms, and he's very physical. If you go look at this guy's highlight tape, Mike Pennel Jr. Plays with an edge. He's one of the nastier defensive linemen in the game, and I think that this is what the Atlanta Falcons has been missing. If you go look at the last time that the Atlanta Falcons made it to the playoffs, which was 2017, we had Dontari Poe, who we signed from the Kansas City Chiefs, and he was that space eater that allowed Grady Jarrett and allowed our linebackers to eat and make plays in the backfield. Ever since we lost Dontari Poe in 2017, and we lost Rashid Hageman, in 2016, we've never been the same. We never had that guy who could be that 6'4", 330-pound guy, 320-pound guy who could just take up space in the middle, who could eat up blockers and things of that nature. And that's what the Atlanta Falcons have been missing. So I really think that this Mike Pennel Jr. signing is going to be huge for this Atlanta Falcons team. Now with bringing him in, you have the ability to play a bigger defensive line. You could put Mike Pennel Jr. at the nose tackle. You could put Grady Jarrett as a 3-4 defensive end. And you can put on the other side Jonathan Bullard as a defensive end. And then on the outside, you can have your outside linebackers either be Dante Fowler Jr. and then JTM, Jacob Tuioti-Marino on one end. You could have Michael Walker coming off the edge. But having those bigger bodies on the inside like Marlon Davidson, guys like John Kaminsky, I feel like he's been playing out of place, playing that defensive tackle position. You also can move John Kaminsky out to the defensive end position in those 3-4 sets. And I really think that Mike Pennel Jr. is going to be a huge piece for this Atlanta Falcons team. I really feel like he's been the piece that we've been missing. If I'm the Atlanta Falcons, I go out and possibly bring in another 300-plus pound guy just in case a guy like Mike Pennel Jr. get injured or just in case we need to rotate some guys in and out. But I definitely think that Mike Pennel Jr. is a huge signing by our Atlanta Falcons. A great job by Terry Fontenot realizing that this Atlanta Falcons team is not big enough on the defensive line, that we needed that space eater on the inside. We needed at least one guy that's 330 pounds that can take up space on the inside and allow Grady Jarrett to have those one-on-one matchups, allow these guys on the edge to have one-on-one matchups. And I believe that this is going to be one of the biggest signings for our Atlanta Falcons this season. I do expect our run defense to improve. I do expect the pass rush to improve with Mike Pennel Jr. being on this team. And I look forward to him getting playing time. I don't believe he'll play against Tampa this week because I believe they signed all of these guys to the practice squad. But I expect Mike Pennel Jr. to play next week against the New York Giants. And I expect him to come in and possibly be one of those guys that can catch on to Dean Pees' scheme really quickly. Dean Pees does run multiple fronts, but he mainly runs the 3-4 set, which is the base defense for our Atlanta Falcons this season. And Mike Pennel Jr. is coming over from the Kansas City Chiefs that runs a similar 3-4 scheme with Steve Spagnuolo. So I love this signing by the Atlanta Falcons. I've been asking for it for the last couple years now, of bringing in a guy who could be that space eater, be that guy you can pair with guys like Grady Jarrett, guys like Marlon Davidson. I've never been a huge fan of Tyler Davidson. I feel like ever since he's came over from the Saints, he really hasn't been a good space eater. He hasn't been that guy that we thought could come in and pair with Grady Jarrett because he's just not that big. If you look at a guy like Tyler Davidson, he's only about 6'1", 6'2", short arms. He's only about 305 pounds to 310 pounds. But this guy, Mike Pennel Jr., is going to be a huge signing for our Atlanta Falcons. But with that being said, you guys let me know what you think of the video. But I just love this signing by Terry Fontenot. I definitely feel like this Falcons team is headed in the right direction on the defense and on the offensive side. Like I always say, trenches matter. But with that being said, this has been your boy Jew. Please hit that subscribe button. If you haven't already hit that subscribe button, hit that like button for your boy. Help your boy get to 2,000 subs. But with that being said, I'll holler at you guys in the next video. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up. Peace.